Okay, welcome everyone to today's video. Very nice to have you join us again, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Cilla Conway, who is an accomplished tarot and oracle deck creator and artist and a workshop leader. Her first deck, she's giggling in the background. She's probably thinking, who is this person he's talking about? Her first deck, the Intuitive Tarot, was begun back in 1973 and has been published twice, most recently, I think, in 2017. She is also the creator of the Shimmering Veil Tarot, the Byzantine Tarot with John Matthews, and the Old Gods Tarot, which is currently in development. Her oracle decks include the Devas of Creation, the multi-dimensional Devas, and a forthcoming deck, the Book of the Dead. We'll be hearing from Cilla today about her background and how she first got into the world of tarot and oracle deck creation, and we'll focus a bit on one of her most recent releases, which is this amazing looking deck, the multi-dimensional Devas Oracle deck, which I think is, I've had a look at it and I think it's absolutely wonderful, thought-provoking, mind-opening work that's full of beauty and depth. So welcome, Cilla. It's a privilege to have you here.
Hi, thank you.
I was trying to think before we came on how it was that I first found you, and I can't remember it exactly, but for some reason I stumbled across a YouTube video of yours where you were talking about the making of the Devas of Creation, and I loved it. I just got drawn into what you were saying about the creative process and your philosophy, and then I saw you in person probably a couple of years later at a London tarot conference a couple of years ago when we all could still meet in person. And I loved your really deep perspective on the tarot. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but I thought you combined this lovely kind of mix of profundity, but with a healthy dose of irreverence and punchiness, which I liked. Nothing po-faced.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this whole thing about, oh, the cards have told me I'm a challenge. No, what's it? Channeler. I can't do it, I'm afraid.
Yeah. No, you were really kind of direct and it was lovely, but yet you were talking about very deep and interesting things. So we'll explore some of that in this interview. So so you're obviously, just from what I've said already, you're obviously a very creative and busy person, but we'll come into a bit more detail about your decks in a second. But perhaps you could give me a bit of background on your a bit of information on your background and, you know, who you are, where you've come from, and whether this kind of intuitive angle was always part of your life or did it emerge later?
Well, I was brought up in Zimbabwe, and my mother was terribly religious and tried desperately to get me to be religious as well. But for some reason, it was, with me, it was always the other. I can remember seeing dust particles coming through the window and the sun on them, you know, and I said to my mother, oh, look, fairy gold. And she said, it's just dust. And I thought, this is an idiot.
I told you, direct.
And so I went to a church school, which has kind of put me off religions per se. I mean, it's funny, here I am doing an Old Gods Tarot. I don't know that I believe in gods at all. I think there are energies. I think there's a cosmic consciousness that created the universe, but gods, no, I think we make the gods. So where am I? Went to church school, yes, bad idea. And then in, oh God, 1971, I came over to Britain and got married. And my husband and I were watching a program one night on a black and white TV about this beacon. And they had a program on the tarot. And he said, oh, you should get a deck, because he knew I was interested in reading. And I said, no, God, that's ugly. God, how can you do anything with them? And 6 months later, I said, got to have a pack of tarot cards. Got it. So because I didn't know anything about the tarot at all, we went to Harrods to buy a deck.
Of course, that's where everyone goes to buy their tarot decks, isn't it?
I got the Swiss 𝙤𝙦, and a lot of people have been talking about it recently, but I hated it. I really hated it. So I thought, okay, I'll start painting my own. I mean, I can't do any worse, can I? And I got out all my medieval books on carpets and tapestries and things, and produced this deck, which was probably pretty bad. And a couple of years later, I think in 1973, I was doodling one night watching TV, and I drew the tarot full. I wasn't even looking. I was just doodling, and looked down and thought, oh my God, that's a very different fool. I've got him here. I
Wonderful.
even prepared him. This is what I prepared earlier. I thought he was insane, but fantastic. I just loved the look on his face, you know? So I thought, all right, I'm gonna do this. And I started painting, and he came out really well. So then did the magician.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And he also worked, so I carried on. And after about 2 years, I had the full majors, but that was it. You know, I was never doing anything else. I really struggled with painting in my early days. I wanted to be an artist at the age of 4. Did I say that? But I wasn't very good. My parents didn't think I was very good. So I struggled. But the tarot worked, you know, these cards were fine. So I put them in a diamond, I put them on the wall. And as you do. And about a couple of years later, I thought, okay, I can paint the miners now. And all that time I was really depressed. I got very, very depressed. Maybe it was just coming to Britain, I don't know. But I was depressed about 8 years. And that was all the time that I was painting the tarot. So I would go to work, come back home and paint. And the deck was finished in 1981, and it was good. It really worked. So I took a photocopy of it. I was telling someone else about this story. I went to take them to the local photocopying place, and we were going through all the cards, laying them out four on the platen at a time. And he got to the death card, and he said, so I said, no, it's transformations, not a problem. And the photocopier ground to a halt. It's like, I think it took him a week to get it back. Poor man. So yeah, I was working with photocopies.
And it sounds as though, I mean, the title is kind of the clue. It sounds as though you were working quite intuitively rather than having a very concrete idea of what the cards meant in traditional sense. I
had Alfred Douglas's book, and I loved his meanings. He was very Jungian. So that started me off on Jung, and it started me off on the history of the cards. And what I would do is I'd just start doodling very, very small. I still got them, teeny tiny little thumbnails before we called them thumbnails. And then if they looked okay, I'd blow them up to about that size. So they're quite small, but yeah, it's totally intuitive. I didn't really have any idea. When I look at them, I think, God, you know, how the hell did I paint these things? I don't know, because I knew nothing. You know, at that stage, I thought, okay, what do I want to do with the buttons? And I wanted them green. I didn't want them red. You know, I didn't want them to be fire. But I wanted them to be creative. So I made them green. I made them link with air. And fire is linked with swords. Yeah. In the new deck, it's the other way around. I've actually switched them. And they do work, you know, as long as you can just close your mind to the tradition, which only became tradition when the Rider-Waite got set in stone, you know. They read really well. So they go. So there I had this tarot deck, couldn't get it published. We did go to the US to see if Kaplan wanted them. And he bought the old ones based on the medieval, and I bought a dishwasher out of that proceeds, as one does. But he didn't, he wanted the new ones. He wanted these ones, the intuitive as it became, but he wanted to sell them in Disneyland. And he wanted me to put fig leaves on all the men. And he wanted to pay me, I think it was 0.5% on something, or each deck was sold. And I just thought, it's got to be a lousy deal, surely. Oh, he wanted the originals. And that was where I stuck. I was not going to give him the originals.
No.
So I just sat there with them for 33 years.
Wow. Wow. And so it was 33 years before they actually were first published and shared with the world. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. That reminds me of, you've probably heard the story of Dolly Parton refusing to give Elvis Presley publishing of I Will Always Love You because he wanted to record it. But the deal would have been that he would have had to have half the publishing rights. And she said that she really wanted him to do it, but wouldn't part with it because she knew that it was hers. So it sounds very similar. You felt this connection and thought, no, I can't give this away to someone else. So did you self-publish it when it first came out?
No, this is the odd thing. I mean, I was busy in the 80s and 70s and no, forget the 70s, 80s and early 90s. I worked. And then I joined a group of Druids led by Philip Carr-Gomm, and he was publishing his own Druid oracle, a Druid tarot deck at that stage. And I thought, well, I should show him my cards. And I did, and he really liked them. And he gave me the contact details. He gave me his agent who had stopped doing tarot, and a link to his publishing company, 𝙁𝙧𝙞𝙯. And I over Christmas, 2001, I think, I worked up this proposal to them and sent it in, and they phoned me the next day. I mean, I didn't actually know what a big deal that was. I just thought, great. And they said, could you bring them in? Because we want to see if we can do the colors. So I brought them in. We had this fantastic meeting. I mean, it was just a meeting to die for. Bear in mind that I'd been working at BP for the last, God knows how many years. We didn't do meetings like that. So we had this fantastic meeting, and they said, yeah, we'll go for it. So I said, oh my God, I published. But again, I didn't actually know that there were sort of quite a few steps in between. So they made them into a deck, and they took them to the London Book Fair. And who was it? Someone in New York, some publishing, St. Martin's in New York liked them and said they would do them. So then I really was going to be a published author.
Amazing.
Then I thought, hey, if I am going to be a published author, maybe I should become a tarot reader, a proper tarot reader, So I did.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think most people think of the normal kind of process of creating a deck is someone's already a tarot reader, they're very interested in tarot, and then they see lots of other people creating decks, and then they work up to creating their own deck. But your first deck was the intuitive tarot, and it sounds to me as though your process was a really intuitive process. It was. Am I right in thinking that in a sense it was the image that came first, that image of the Fool, and it led you into this whole journey that then led to being published and having a deck, and then thinking, okay, I better read tarot then. What? That's amazing. Wow.
I mean, the Fool is my muse, if you like. I had a dream once. I call them barefoot. Well, actually, no, I don't. What do I call them? Cross between the Fool and the Magician. And he's got bare feet, and I had a dream with this barefoot magician, 50 years ago. So it was a long time ago, but he is my muse. And actually this Fool in the Old Gods isn't really him, but it's the barefoot immortal, Chinese barefoot immortal.
Because the Old Gods deck, you're bringing something like 3 deities together in each one of those cards. Is that right?
Yeah. It's a sort of a smorgasbord. I'm not sure what people will make of it, but hey, if it reads, it's fine. I will have to make it all up as a deck to check whether it reads or not.
Yeah, but it's a really good example of how the same kind of energy, if you like to use that word, it's not necessarily the best word, but the same kind of energy that represents something like the Fool or the Magician can take form in so many different ways. And depending on the deck you're using or the deck you're creating, then it will look very different. But some of that energy is obviously common to them all.
Source, really, isn't it? I mean, it's an archetype.
Yeah. So you got to the stage of publishing the Intuitive Tarot and then becoming a tarot reader. You did that at Watkins Books, is that right?
Yeah, they had an esoteric center at that stage. And because I knew Rob, who worked there, and I'd also got chatting to Carsten because I was showing him these ones as I painted them. They said, well, listen, we've got an opening for a reader. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, to write, because I'd left my BP job by that stage. So thrown myself into the unknown. I recommend it.
Wonderful, yeah. Taking that step off the cliff, like the Fool, just stepping into the unknown.
It was, I couldn't do it for about, 33 years. I was just too scared. And every time I got the idea and tried it, I'd go into this absolute paroxysm of terror. Couldn't do it.
And did you find when you started reading with the card, did that in any way change your perspective on what the cards meant or your relationship to that image that you'd created?
No, it widened it, because obviously when you're reading, if you just stick with the meanings that you know, it probably won't be right. You have to just see what comes. And I did. I mean, I don't think I'm a brilliant tarot reader at all. I've seen people do a lot better than me because they let the ideas come through. And because I painted the decks, I'm still a little bit stuck on, well, the Fool has got to be jumping off the cliff, hasn't it?
Yeah. So it's very difficult, isn't it? You've got that template. We all have that kind of template in our head of what's the proper tarot card. And sometimes when I teach people tarot, I say to them, you can do it in different ways, and sometimes it's okay to work from that template, almost with whichever deck you're using, if you need to have something in the background. But it's also okay to really let go and just go with what's in the card in front of you, and that can be hard for people if they're not used to it.
I think this is why people prefer the tarot to oracle cards, because with an oracle card, it's all, there's no structure, because I was thinking about this the other day. I know that people absolutely went for my Shimmering Veil, which astonished me. I thought it was going to be quite a difficult deck to sell, but somehow it struck a chord. But again, it's got the tarot structure, you see. The oracle decks are much more difficult because people don't understand there is a structure. And anyway, why the hell do they have to put the energy in to learn it,
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your deck. So you've got the Intuitive Tarot, and that came from an intuitive place. And I've done a walkthrough of that on my channel, so people can check that out. And there are others online as well. And they are very beautiful, evocative, intuitive images. They are the kind of images that spark feeling, I think. I recognize what you say about the Fool. I remember the first time I saw your Fool card, what it conveyed to me was that kind of mischievous, almost kind of hectic, a slightly off-kilter energy. There was something slightly disturbing about him, which I love.
Well, he's supposed to be, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And you're right, that kind of look in his eye where you think, oh, you're a dangerous character, but you're also a kind of empowering character, and that's lovely. So the theme there seems very clear, that kind of intuitive theme. You've worked on other decks, some of which you've collaborated on and some of which are your own. So the Shimmering Veil Tarot, what's the theme of that?
Does it have a theme? I mean, basically, I began at thinking about the 8 dimensions of reality. Now, you can't see it, unfortunately. Up above there, you can just see a hand holding what looks like a sort of veil or something. Well, that's a sort of schematic 8-dimensional thing, motif. I was doing a couple of paintings, big paintings, and this is the High Priestess from the Shimmering Veil. And I was saying, well, you know, I want her to be holding something, but I don't know, I don't want it to be a baby, and I don't want it to be the earth and air. And I had a friend staying with me, and he knew that I was interested in multidimensional reality. So he said, well, why don't you put the schematic in? So I did. Shame she's on the wall. I really need to sort my video out so that you can see her.
But again, the Shimmering Veil is a very intuitive deck in the sense that the images are so evocative. And you mentioned that concept then of the 8 dimensions, and we'll come on to that, I think, when we talk about the multi-dimensional devas, yeah, which feels as though that's a sort of step on from that. But the devas, first devas deck, where did that come from?
That came from a talk I went to. Now, I have said this so many times that people will get fed up with me. I can't stand angel cards. I absolutely cannot abide them. I think they are disgusting. And a friend of mine said he'd walked into his sitting room once, and there was this being there that he called an angel. And he said it was so powerful that he just couldn't deal with it. He said he was shaking for a week. Okay, he's a bit of a, you know, but I took that on board, because I think that if you did encounter an angel in its full energy, you would find it terrifying, and you should find it terrifying. So I went along to this talk on angels, and I really enjoyed it. You know, the guy was lovely, but he had all Doreen, you know, decks.
We know, she who must not be named. We know who you mean.
And I said to him, you know, I loved your talk, but these decks are disgusting. Someone should paint a deck with angels as they really are. And I told him the story about my friend. And he said, well, just go for it. I thought, yeah. Woke up the next morning and I thought, yeah, why not? Now, I missed a step out. I think it was 95, I went up to Findhorn in Scotland. Because a friend of my mother's actually had gone and was raving about it. She just thought it was the bee's knees. So I'd gone up, but Findhorn used to channel plant beings, you know. Yep. And when they were doing that, they had these gardens full of plants that were just extraordinary, you know, incredible energy, cabbages this big that kind of shone, you know.
And so in really poor soil, in really sandy, northeast. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think they had about 2 pounds to start the whole center with.
Yeah.
So I went up, but they'd stopped doing plants and they were concentrating on growing people. So I thought, hey, all right. But they did talk about devas. Now, it's not devas, it's devas. And it's not actually devas, it's dewas, because it's a Sanskrit word. Yep. But I call them devas because it's easier. That's what it looks like. So I came back down to London, and I just moved into a house, which I loved dearly. And there was this rather poor, pathetic tree fuchsia wilting in the back garden. So I went out into the garden and I said to the devas, hey guys, please will you look after this plant for me? And I came out the next morning and it was in two bits on the floor. It was like, oh shit, maybe they're not very nice. And they're
certainly not bright and shiny and sanitized.
No. They're powerful and they're true. And this tree fuchsia was a mess, you know. So that was a pre-story. I'd already encountered the devas. So I started painting the next morning after being at this talk. And the first thing I had, well, the piece of card I had, and I didn't manage to put these in order, I'm afraid. I ran out of time. Yeah, the first card I had was bright oranges and reds. So I decided to make an angel out of that. And it turned into the sun. So I thought, oh, okay. So you get a deva of the sun. It's not an angel. It must be a deva. Fine. So I'll paint a deva deck. Next one that came out was, I think, Saturn. And I said, all right, I want the planets. And I went on and it grew, you know, like Topsy. And it has a structure. It begins with the energies before creation. Sort of Kabbalistic idea, Ein Sof, Ein Sof, Ein Sof, whatever. And then it's the Big Bang. And then you've got the angels. Now I'll see if I can find you an angel, because they were a shock to me. I didn't think I could paint anything like that. What have we got here? This is Eros. This is one. I haven't called them. God, can you see?
Yeah, beautiful. Yes, yeah, and interesting, because there's that kind of impression of something. I think somebody could look at that and think, oh, I'm seeing something kind of angelic, but not the kind of traditional image. It's
Something
blurs around the edges, and that just opens up all the possibilities in your mind, doesn't it?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I don't think I've got that sort of energy I was talking about, but this is creative inspiration.
Gorgeous. What medium did you use to paint these? So was it?
I used just about everything. I used acrylics. I used a little bit of oils. I even used spray paint. This is pastel over watercolor.
Wow.
So what's talking to me? Excuse me.
The devas are talking to us now.
There's a phone, some bloody stupid phone. Let's see if I can find anything else. Oh, okay, fine, can't. I then went on from the angelics down into sort of 4 fundamental constituents of creation. And this is time and space, I think. I don't use the cards enough. I don't do readings very often now, so I'm forgetting all these meanings, which is very embarrassing.
But you've got them, haven't you, in the box for the multi-dimensional devas? You've got inside, you've got these cards, and then set beside them, you've got the original card. And that's fascinating to see, because they both, in a sense, they're both representing similar kind of sets of energy. I don't know if people can see there, but similar kind of sets of energy, but expressed differently. And it's clear that the multi-dimensional devas are going almost kind of a deeper level, and also a more human level. So you have the mind and everything. So it's fascinating seeing those different levels being expressed.
I thought that people would have a problem, you know, well, we got these cards, what's the difference? And it's actually quite difficult to explain, except that like you say, the multi-dimensional sort of, for me, drills down into the dimensions around us. Whereas the devas just are about creation per se.
Yeah.
At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, and well, let's talk a bit then about how you do see it, what your philosophy is on tarot and oracle and so on. What do you think the cards are tapping into, and what are we tapping into when we read the cards?
I think that there is an archetypal layer that is separate from us, but we tap into in our dreams and in our creative work. I think it's energy that can make itself manifest if it wants to, usually doesn't. I definitely think the devas wanted to contact me for some reason, maybe because I was painting and they thought, hey, here's an arm, let's use it, you know. Don't know how much sense of humor they do have a really cookie sense of humor thinking about it. It's very diametrically opposite ours. It's quite dark at times. I love that.
And that's similar to what Dorothy McLean at Findhorn, I think, has described, because she of course was one of the founders who did most, I think, with the devas in terms of connecting.
I can't remember the other woman's name.
It was 𝙁𝙧𝙞𝙀𝙀 as well, who she was the one who heard the kind of the voice that she scribed then. And but I remember seeing an interview or reading an interview with Dorothy McLean, and she described her experience of the devas very similarly to what you just said there, that um, there was a power behind them, and it wasn't that it wasn't kind and it wasn't nice. It's just that it was not really fathomable by human minds. You just had to go with it.
I call it that it's true. And you know, we hear a lot of humans use too many bloody words. We hear a lot of words, but the devas are true. And I think when we hear truth, we can usually tell, apart from the lunatic fringe.
Well, and truth it's hard to discern truth in words, isn't it? You know, there is something about
that's true. Yeah.
There's something about that kind of interpretive thing with words, but images, they hit you. You know, you feel.
And sound as well. Music hits us, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that kind of energy that you're talking about, would you say that that's the same energy that's coming through you when you're creating a deck that you're then tapping into when reading?
It's very similar. I mean, I use a lot of head stuff when I'm creating and when I'm reading. And certainly if my client is intuitive, my readings are a hell of a lot better, which is why one of the reasons I say I'm not that great. So it's levels and levels and levels, I would say. But yeah, it's got to all be part of this huge creative energy or thing that we can tap into.
And the evolution on then in terms of the devas of creation, what's the difference, would you say, between those and your first deva deck?
Oh, you mean the multidimensional?
Sorry, the
Yeah, the multidimensional, I got asked to paint another deva deck because there was one particular card that I couldn't put into the deva deck, the first one. It just didn't fit, unfortunately. By the time I'd got, 72 cards, I either chucked half of them out to put this one in, or I began again, and I didn't want to. I had 72 cards, they worked. So this one, 25, 20, 25, 20. I even know its number. Here. This one. And I posted it on Facebook, and someone said, oh, please do another deva deck and put this one in. And I thought, all right, this is, quite a few years after the original. Why not? I usually try and get some sort of guidance before I start a deck to see if it has legs. So I started painting these images, and they were all pretty. And then this one appeared. I kept it all out, shouldn't I? Here we are. Twilight.
I love that one. Yeah, I remember seeing that one. You posted that on Facebook as well, I think. And yeah.
So I looked at that and I thought, it's got such a power. What the hell is it? So I darkened it down, I painted it, and then I called it Twilight. But I thought, this could be somewhere where I just go in, because Twilight is that magical time when the veil lifts. So I could go down into God knows where, or I could paint the dimensions. And both of them were going to be extremely difficult. I didn't know how I would paint the dimensions. They're all. But in the end, I decided that the dimensions were where I wanted to go. I mean, if I tried to go into where that unknown place would be, I'd probably end up with the Book of the Dead. I don't know. I honestly haven't a clue. So yeah, I gave up on that. But yeah, what was the question?
It was that issue of the kind of the drive of the creative process being what you tap into when you're reading as well, and how this deck's different to what you've done before.
If I read for myself now, which I don't do very often, I will use the devas, one of the deva decks. If I mix them, I'll mix them with a tarot, probably the Shimmering Veil, as I need more practice on the Shimmering Veil. But I don't know, I love the multidimensional. I love the devas because they're so subtle, you know? You can ask them things that you can't ask the tarot. And it'll give you these answers that you've got to think about.
Absolutely, and the system you've got in the deck. You know, as we record this, I haven't yet recorded, but I am going to record a walkthrough and review of this deck. So that will either go up before or after this video. But at some point, people will be watching this video and they'll be able to find the walkthrough as well. But you know, obviously, it comes with its lovely box and all the lovely cards and this fantastic book where you know you set out the images. And you also set out your musings on each of the topics. So things like deep magic and manifestation and wisdom keepers, but then also not just all these lovely kind of profound sounding energetic states, but also some of the blocks, some of the things that stop us, that mind-based stuff, hubris and arrogance, greed, lies and malice. They each have a card, spinning, you know, things like this. It's very interesting because it's not often, I think, that you come across, particularly an oracle deck, where there's a system in the deck in the way that there appears to be here. When
I managed to get onto a degree course in 1999, thereabouts. I wanted to do a degree ever since I was like that high. And this was the first time I ever managed it. And the tutor said to me, "Is there any concept behind your work?" And I said, well, I have something that I'm working on, but it usually comes out later. You know, I paint this and then I see what the concept is." And he said, "Yeah, I suppose so."
He wasn't very open to that intuitive creation process.
Absolutely not. No, I mean, they were all into conceptual in a big way, you know. And I got through pretty well, but it was by the skin of my teeth, I think. He still thinks I'm an idiot.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because you know what you said there is fascinating, because it's that indication that sometimes we understand things by doing them, and we understand what's coming out of our creative process by getting into it and just letting it flow. And then we can cut it off if we're being too intellectual about it and thinking, oh, I must do this next and then do this and it must look like this. Yeah. So I'm glad you didn't let yourself get cut off.
Oh, well, I did tell the tutors that the course was rather like a badly crocheted garment. There's more holes than substance. I didn't like that.
Brilliant. And has your creative process changed at all over the years, your art practice? Because you talked about that very first card that kind of came to you, that fool that almost presented himself or herself or itself to you. You know, has that process changed?
I think it changes with the medium I use. So, you know, the devas were painted with just about anything. The multidimensional were all oils. The Shimmering Veil were all oils. The Book of the Dead were all oils. This thing, it's painted in Photoshop on the computer, and it drove me mad at the beginning. It was like, it's taken me 3 weeks to do one bloody card, and even then it's wrong.
Why did you choose to use Photoshop for that? What, was that just a practical?
I think it was probably practical, but yeah, for some reason, I think it was because I wanted to do the Book of the Dead, Old Gods, and I wanted 3 gods in one card.
Right.
And I knew I wouldn't be able to get that level of detail in oils, because oils are sort of more fluid, and unless it's absolutely amazingly huge, you can't get detail. Not the way I paint anyway.
It could be the deva of Photoshop has just grasped you and said, you're going to use this. So
yeah, and if I'd had any sense at all, I would have used Painter, because you know, you can get a really good painting program, and I have this really good painting, but do I use it? No, I use Photoshop. and an old version at that.
And so you're developing that now. That's still ongoing, and you're also developing the Book of the Dead. So tell me about that.
No, I'm not developing that. That's this.
Ah, so you've actually got that. That's ready and done.
And
wonderful.
It is beautiful. I mean, this is by far the best produced deck I've ever done.
And is that available for people now, or is that still to?
It's still on its way from China. It's going by sea because they. Right. I mean, the price to send it by air was something like $3,000. And I thought, no,
wow,
I don't even want it that fast, you know. I thought if it arrived in October, it'd be a good time.
Wow. And what's the kind of concept behind that?
Oh God, is there a concept? Okay, I'd finished the multi-dimensional devas, and in there, right at the end, there's this card that is through the veil. And I wasn't sure whether through the veil meant death or what. I just liked it. I liked the idea, so I put it in. And I think I finished the deck in, say, February 2020. March 12th, I went out to go to the shops, and I was told by the neighbor that I couldn't because we weren't allowed out. So it's like, oh my God, what will I eat for 3 weeks? You know, I haven't got enough money. Help. And I spoke to a friend in the UK, and he said, get some money. Whatever you do, just get some money and get whatever food you can. So I went down to the little local shop, which is actually very good. And it has a bank next door. So I managed to get some money out. And I came back and I looked at there were still paintings all over the floor in my studio, which is downstairs. I thought, is there a theme here? You know, is there something that's actually emerging that I could use? So I looked through it, and there was a ghost horse. There was some sort of etiolated figures that I looked like, you know, things that are caught in limbo. And then there was a demon, and I thought, Book of the Dead. Just came. And I knew there were books of the dead, you know, I knew there was an Egyptian one and a Tibetan one, so I started looking through those. And I think because we were in lockdown, I just started painting. It was such fun. I mean, I finished it in 2 months. Let's see if I can find, actually, this is stupid, you know. Oh, hold on. This is the very first card that actually ended up as this is a last card that ended up as the first card because there's somebody dying. I'm going to be so oh dear, when I actually go through the pearly gates or whatever, I'm going to be so shit. Okay, where are we? Are they in order? No.
As you're looking for that, I'm just thinking that, you know, you mentioned that last card of your previous deck was almost like a gateway into thinking about this one. That makes me think of, you know, we've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe where all these different films connect with each other, and we've got the Cilla Conway Tarot and Oracle universe where the decks connect with each other but not necessarily in a linear way.
I think it's probably in its 8-dimensional way, except that the multi-dimensional devas are based on 11 dimensions. Yeah. Because by the time I got there, I'd done a little bit more reading, and I figured that it's, well, I started the multi-dimensional devas with the idea of 8, and it was a hard slog, you know, they just wouldn't go right. And at that stage, I must have come over for one of my last trips to the UK, and I spoke to Carsten at Watkins, and he said, why has it got 8? So I said, I don't know, just seemed to be the right idea. He said, well, maybe you make it more. And another friend said, should be 13. I think that's the idea that the North American Indians have. But when I came back, I thought, no, the scientist figure, it's 11, with all these little curled up dimensions at the bottom of the brains and strings and things. So it's got 11 dimensions. What was I going to show you? The etiolated figures. Look Look, isn't this gorgeous?
It does look amazing.
It smells gorgeous.
I love the
Yummy.
packaging of your decks. They are lovely, really, really
The
well made.
Yeah, the Chinese have done me proud. This is a beautiful book. Oops, so that's one of the dark cards. One of the bright cards.
Wow, lovely. Contrast.
I'm still looking for the etiolated spirits. Where are we? They must be in here. Here we are.
Oh, wow.
They're a bit elongated because the original picture was fatter. But hey, I couldn't.
They look a bit like a mirage almost. That kind of wavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I actually think that people who can't deal with being dead go into this limbo and hang there and they don't know who they are. They don't know what they are even. They just know that they can't get to Earth and they can't get anywhere else. And then I have this figure. Who I love. She is a psychopath, not a psychopath, you idiot.
Psychopomp.
Thank you.
I was thinking, I know the word, but I can't think of it either. Psychopomp, yeah.
Yeah, psychopomp. And she's, I think, Ghanaian or something. Wow. Anyway, she's a black psychopomp. Love her. Yeah. And then she can say, all right, do you want to come through? And if they do, they sort of go through. This is a very difficult card to see. There's a sort of a figure going up through, but it's very, very faint. And then they can make their way to the place where they see a kind of story of their lives. They go through not a video, but a reliving of their lives. And if they can manage that, which I would have thought would be very difficult for, you know, limbo spirits, then they can move on up into the gardens, because there are lots and lots of gardens.
Wow, lovely. Wow. So, I mean, again, there's a system there, but it's a system I can imagine that people coming to the deck, even if they came to it quite cold, wouldn't need to know that system to be able to engage with the cards. But learning the system afterwards or as you go would be an amazing, you know, kind of adjunct to the reading.
I'm a bit worried about this deck, actually, thinking about it, because I think quite a few people are going to come along and say, oh, I can contact Great Aunt Agatha and ask her where she's left my will or whatever. You know, they'll go through without any respect. And I think that if you do that, you could get some fairly shitty answers. I got one very dark reading where somebody's mother had died just last year. And the cards she got were awful. I mean, really awful. I was like, Christ, there's something horribly wrong there, you know. Maybe the mother is sort of reliving all the stuff that she didn't deal with when she was alive. I honestly don't know, but I think you have to treat it with caution. Rather like you know, it's not like in a Ouija board, which I did once and never again. I think it's as long as you know that you're doing it with respect, you're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's one of the things I teach my tarot students, actually. You know, I'm not a big fan of the daily one card draw and all that kind of stuff. I think they're fine for, you know, learning the cards. And, you know, I certainly think you want to pull a card or two and then study them. But I get nervous when I hear that people pull a card in the morning and then spend the day looking for that card in the day. And then at the end of the day, they look back over the day and look at that card and try and fit it all together. And I think the problem there is it's just making it too much of a commonplace thing. You know, I don't need tarot to make basic decisions for myself. I want it to be helping me with my thinking and really helping me to go deep. So approaching tarot and oracle with some reverence, I find I get much better readings and much more kind of responsible readings.
Because you're reaching through into this other dimension, you know. If you don't do it with respect, the beings in there are not going to be happy, and they're vastly more powerful than we are.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting, you know, I live in Italy now. When I was trying to work out, I don't know how, again, you see, I made this enormous decision without actually too much thinking. I knew I wanted to be on a hill with a beautiful view. And at that stage, it didn't include mountains, but I wanted a bougainvillea. So it had to be somewhere warm. And when I asked myself where I wanted to go, it was like Italy because of all the art. Have I seen any of the art? No, I haven't. And then I came out. I decided one day, all right, if I'm going to put this money where my mouth is, let's see if there's any, if it has any legs. So I came out and the houses were shit. And I was like, not really. I'd seen a house in France that I loved the look of, and I took a trip to France. First time I'd ever driven on the motorway out of 𝙗𝙤, and I drove to Nice, which is about 5 hours in the dark. Thank God it was in the dark. I got to Toulouse, and it was a beautiful house, but there's another story. The French, of course, were having a strike. So I got to Toulouse, and I was told I had to get this bus. So I went to the bus, and there were about 1,000 people waiting for the bus because the trains were on strike. Okay, so put on this pathetic look, little old lady look, you know, and someone pushed me onto the right bus. So there I was, just half asleep, looking at the countryside, and then I saw these strange clouds on the horizon. Oh God, those are weird clouds, and they were the Pyrenees. And I thought, I have got to have a house where I can see the mountains. End of story. That was it, you know. And the house in France, I couldn't see the mountains. So I came back to Italy and carried on. And about, I don't know, 15 months, May 2016, I rang one of the old estate agents I've been going through, and I go, have you got anything new? Because really. And they said, yeah, we're looking at a house that you might like right now. So I said, send me some pictures. And they sent me these pictures. And it was like, Christ, I've got to see this house. So I was supposed to be coming out in 2 weeks. I changed my flight. I came out. I arrived on a Saturday, saw the house on Monday, put an offer in, and bought it on Friday. Because you can do that here. And it's my dream house. It's got 2 mountains out there.
Wow. And that must help with the creative process, that inspiration of nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's got a forest over there.
Wow.
I'm 23 kilometers away from the nearest big town. So I don't go shopping very often, and there isn't anything to buy anyway apart from food. But it's brilliant. You know, that's why I haven't gone anywhere, because I've got everything I want here. Apart from, you know, the pandemic.
Yeah. But it sounds as though, you know, your creative process, I imagine, was a support during that period.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I painted the Book of the Dead right through the lockdown. And can't remember if I was writing the book at the same time. I was probably writing the book at the same time, but it takes a while to get the books right. The Book of the Dead, the Old Gods book is going to be a bloody nightmare. Trying to get all the gods to fit into 1 page, you know, 2 pages.
They'll want more than 1 page each, I can tell.
The gods do, definitely. Yeah. They get 2. The Pips only get 1.
Yeah. Brilliant. So when are these decks? So you've got the Old Gods and you've got the Book of the Dead. When are we likely to see them out here in the rest of the world?
I think the Old Gods is going to be ready. Well, I'm saying this. It should be ready by spring next year, because it's gone well. And I have been writing the book as I go. it's just going to take quite a lot of editing, because what I've done is I've gone to Wikipedia. And I shouldn't say this because people think Wikipedia, but it's incredibly useful. Wikipedia, okay. Dump it in my book, change a few words. No, that doesn't work. But it's going to have to be rewritten completely. Oh, God. I'm not a writer.
A lot of work, a lot of work. But you say you're not a writer, but the writing in your guidebooks that I've seen are, well, it's great writing. I mean, it's so engaging, and you're dealing with big concepts, and you don't dumb them down. So it's not like you kind of, turn them into nice, pretty angels and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's accessible. I think people will, those who are interested in your decks and have been interested in what you've said in this interview, I would encourage people to take a look, because even if they don't see themselves as intuitive kind of people, these decks are a great way of triggering that intuitive function in people, I think.
I hope so, yeah. I mean, I thought that the devas would enable people to access their intuitive function. And that's one of the reasons I didn't put titles on the cards, because I thought, look, if you want to use them, you have to just get this hit. And that's what it means. What I did is I took them up to Scotland, because I had a whole lot of friends up there because of Fintorn. And we went through every single card as I was painting it, saying, all right, what does this say to you? And some of the meanings that they came up with are so beautiful. So they're still in the book, Since then, I've been okay for writing my own books, and I get them edited as well by friends. But I was listening to Kelly's talks on both the Deva decks, and she's very clear on it. She's really good, actually. She takes her time, and she said, they have a structure as long as you follow the structure. And she also said, I recommend people to read the books. I'm quite horrified that they don't. I mean, if they don't have a clue, really, because the books help.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. Definitely. No, I think that's right. So the Old God, you think spring next year, and what about Book of the Dead?
Now, well, October.
Brilliant. So those
It's
are two things to, and those are two things for people to look for. But all of your published decks are available through your website, is that right?
Yeah.
I'll put links to all of those things below, and I will also, of course, put links to Facebook and so on, where people can follow along and see where the creative process is going. Have you got something on the horizon that you haven't yet started but you think might be coming?
Well, I don't know. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, every day is a sort of a bonus now. John Matthews has got some sort of project, and John Matthews always has a project, and that he'd like me to help with. And then there was a friend in Crete, no, Spetsis, somewhere in Greece, and she was talking about quite a fluid deck to do with Tai Chi. Now that sounds really interesting, because that would be, I'd be able to get to my oil paints again, because at the moment the poor little things are sort of languishing downstairs. So those are, something. I honestly don't know. But I've also got a friend who has been building a lorry, a truck, for 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, Jesus Christ, 7 years.
Wow.
It's finished, but he's still stuck in the UK. I want to have a bit of a drive around in this truck.
Who knows what that might spark in terms of a future deck.
Wouldn't you love to see Capri? And I want to see Pompeii and Herculaneum before they blow. Did you see that there's a couple of super volcanoes that are sort of getting ready to blow? And it's sort of like, okay, I know the devas are wanting a little bit of progress with us, but a super volcano would be
that would be major, wouldn't it? That would be, yeah.
You can kiss goodbye to a lot of humanity, I think, if one of them blows.
Yeah. No, well, hopefully we can turn things around before that becomes a necessity. Yeah.
Go and talk nicely to the devas. Hey guys, please don't blow up the world.
Now, this question I know is going to be a bit like asking you to pick a favorite child, but is there any one deck of yours that you are particularly fond of, and why? And if so, why would that be?
I think I'd got to say this one, the intuitive, because it's so much part of me, you know.
It's where it began, isn't it? It's where it
Yeah.
began. The whole kind of the Cilla Conway Tarot and Oracle universe began with that card.
And the devas, always the
Yeah,
devas. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Because they showed me
Brilliant.
who I was.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, that's lovely. That's a lovely kind of way of summarizing, I think, what your work is about. Certainly what I've taken from it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's been lovely speaking with you. As I say, I'm going to put all the links below where people can find you. I'll also link to my walkthrough of your decks, both the one that I've already done and the one that I'm about to do. I wish you all the best of luck with your next projects. I look forward to those coming out. I think they're going to be fantastic. And hopefully we can speak again when they are out and we can talk about those in some more depth.
Hope so. That'd be lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Cilla.